welcome to another video. In today's video, we're taking a look and seeing what's going on and talking about a little history and facts. So in the 1980s, we discovered there was a hole in the ozone layer and we came together as a planet and we actually fixed it. Okay, in the 90s, we discovered that there was this thing called global warming, and actually oil companies had already discovered this way back in the 1950s, and they had been covering this up for decades. And in the 90s, the knowledge became more prevalent. Well, then the oil companies went and found some scientists that were willing to go into churches and convince church people that the weather was only able to be influenced by Jesus, okay? 30 years has gone by, now we're deep into it, possibly even to the point where we're not even going to be able to pull out of the problem because we've done nothing but debate with people that aren't that bright for 30 years. People that aren't that bright, that live in a fantasy world, that think that, you know, the sky fairies are controlling the weather and such, okay? So as scientists had to debate this like it was a valid, equal conversation to have. I mean, that now, like I said, we're pretty much screwed, okay? So now we come out here, Central Oregon, all right, and we look around. People like Les Schwab got rich off having cows wander around public lands, federal lands, and just eating up whatever they wanted, just kind of walking around. They kept the fires down, and they overgrazed and they underfired millions and millions and millions of acres. And companies like Les Schwab got insanely rich, and he made all his money in cows, and then he put his money into a company that sells and does tire stuff, okay? Well, what happened is that all that money that he made was from his cows degrading the lands, okay? Now that company is owned by a California-based investment company, okay? So it's the benefits of all this land being destroyed by cows went to some guy, and now it's just some investment firm, okay? So you see over here, nothing's been done. You can see the quality here and see the quality here, okay? So it's a massive big difference, what's going on. I've been discovering this now for 3 years, and people very similar to the oil people that found the scientists to go convince the church people, the same type, the same mentality of people now. I've been trying to bring this to the attention of the authorities of Central Oregon, the attention of the journalist, okay? And now what I realize has been happening is every time I contact somebody to say, hey, look, my results on my property are mind-blowing, okay? And if this isn't mind-blowing to you, you know, like, you don't really have context. So what's going on all over there versus here, this is sequestering carbon. That is not. Okay, that is pretty much destroying the land. The junipers and the sage just destroy it. And this is what it looks like when it starts to come back. Okay, and you get this stuff here, right? It's all over the place. Well, that's like one of the early steps in getting this land, and this is how it converted. This was all a giant lake bed. So these plants were the same plants that converted it from a lake bed into grasslands, right? We're actually seeing like live how it goes. When the ground is just too destroyed, I guess, just too leached of nutrients, this stuff comes in, right? And what this does is this catches the grass seeds. It doesn't allow them to move around. keeps them in place. So it's like the first step. One of the first steps, this little tiny stuff here. That's a first step too, right? So it's like, it may look like there's patches out here, but the patches have become full of all kinds of stuff. And I actually walk around out here and I'm very careful as I'm walking around. Okay, now what you're looking at here is just a couple years of work, okay? Now we're gonna go over here to where I've put in, well, I've done it a couple times over here. The first time was like 4 years ago. The second time was like 3 years ago, I think. So the difference is drastic. It is just amazing to me, and potentially anybody that understands what's really going on. And if you don't understand what's going on, then it just looks like a bunch of grass, okay? So the big deal is that the cattle were how this all got destroyed, right? And no fire, okay? You park animals out on land that eat grass, and you just keep them in one little area, they're gonna destroy the land. And if you don't have fire roll through like every 5 years, you're just not gonna replenish the soils. So it's just gotten so far out of whack in the past 200 years that this has been going on. And see, actually, animals and eventually cows are a part of the solution, but they have to be managed correctly through intensive grazing. You can't just park your cows out on a field and expect the field not to just get trashed. You have to move the cows through the field on a daily basis. Move them, move them, move them, move them, move them. And what that'll do is that'll force the cows to eat stuff that they otherwise wouldn't eat. And it's also gonna spread out what they're doing, okay? You don't want them just parked in one spot. Now, what I'd really like to do next year in this field, you see this field this is no joke, solid here. I mean, this is like, let me just walk out there to give you some context here, okay? See this stuff? Look at this. This is actually tall, you know? This isn't just like little grass. This is big stuff. All right? It's up to here. All right? Okay. So now, what I want to do out here, what I'd really like to do out here next June 1st is when I've calculated when's going to be the best time to do this out here, is chicken tractors. So I like to build myself 20 chicken tractors, which will be, I think, about 1,500 chickens, right? And just start them along there June 1st and boom. And possibly a second round late summer, fall, possibly. It's kind of hard around here. It can literally go from summer to winter in like 1 second. So yeah, let's check out these yarrow ladybugs. Boy, those ladybugs love it. And one thing we've got going on out here, or don't have going on out here this year, is pollinators. Like, this year is the worst I've ever seen by far. I have yet to see a honeybee, and I've seen one bumblebee, and typically I wouldn't see a lot of them, but I would see enough. And there's these flowers everywhere, and there's a pollinator. That's one. I have seen some other little bees, small bees, but nowhere near what they have been in the past. It's actually a little troubling, to be honest. So you see how, and there's a 5-gallon bucket right there, you can barely see it. So I'll completely buried. This over here, so this has a year or two advance, and I mean, it's nearly solid. Like right here, holy cow, look at this. This is like almost 100% coverage. Now, running chicken tractors through here is just gonna kick the ground off like crazy because all the nitrogen they'll put down. And I'm also kind of hoping and like that this cheatgrass seed will be ready to be eaten by the time the chickens come through. So this is actually an invasive species, right? We got it everywhere. And I'm not gonna do anything to get rid of it other than pass chickens over it. And I think eventually it will never go away because it's everywhere. But I think eventually I'll get a lot lower percentages of it running chickens through, because my guess is the chickens are gonna eat it. They're gonna eat the seeds, right? Because it's chicken food. Chickens eat seeds and stuff. Or they eat all kinds of stuff, right? So that's what I don't know if I'll have the money. Maybe I'll be able to do a few chicken tractors, maybe not 20, but really it's in the volume when you really can get it done. But you know, I don't even have a person to sell or the way to clean and prepare them, you know. So, and ants, I'm actually in the process of designing a 3D printed biodegradable ant killer. So I use these buckets here, my ant genocide buckets, and I've just been moving around. But my concept now is just to make a little single thing, and just every time you see ants, plop one down, and don't worry about it, just leave it there, because ants will come back into other holes. Like you'll kill all the ants off, and they'll be back next season. Okay, you see there's no ants there. This one did its job. Let's see if I can go back over here and find where those ants were. And look how thick this is. Look at this. This is just wild. I mean, this is like a lawn almost. You see that? The yarrow is just kicking butt. Okay, here we go. Right? And that's what I do, is I just plop that down there. They'll go in there, find it's sugar and borax mixed in. And they'll take it down to the queen, and it'll be dead. But my new ones are little, out of algae print, right? I'm buying a 3D printer, and I'll be able to just plop that down there and not worry about it. If something crushes it, or it'll biodegrade eventually. That's the new ones I'm working on currently, right? And I might even put those up on my my eBay store, okay? But just look at this. Is this not just amazing? This is what it's supposed to look like out here, right? This is not an accident that this happened to me, okay? I came out here to start a farm. I've been studying farming for like 2 decades, all right? Permaculture farming, all right? 1,000 species farm. That's what was going to be out here. But not anymore, but I would definitely like to get it going up to a chicken farm. Because with chicken tractors, running chicken tractors through here, that is just going to kickstart the grass like nothing else, right? Like cows, nothing. Goats, nothing are going to do it as good as chickens. Chickens aren't going to really knock down the grass. They might. I don't know if they're going to mow the grass down or not. I'm not quite sure. But that's I'm contemplating building a freaking robotic mower potentially could knock it down. I mean, ideally you get animals out here to knock it down, but depending on when the animals go through, some of the stuff just won't get eaten. So Oh boy, look at this. When you get I love the mixture. When you get, this is just cheatgrass, but when you have the yarrow and the grass growing right together, you could just tell everything's better. Like it just all looks like that's the way it's supposed to look everywhere, right? Just solid like that. And it will get to that point eventually, but I need intervention, right? I actually need to get some sort of, and chickens, I've come to the conclusion that chickens are going to be really beneficial. They're like these patches here, when I pass a chicken tractor over that, the following year, that'll look probably much better. Now check out these things here. I think this is actually edible, like some kind of lettuce. Or it was. Now it's going to seed, so it really won't be anything now. But look at how big that is. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, look at that. That's huge. These plants are not just little freaking plants. This is like stuff growing massively out here. Oh, just the sheer numbers of stuff. It's just like the variety. You can go into my Central Oregon playlist and look up species documentation if you're interested in actually looking at all the different species that are out here. I spent last summer documenting them all, and I'm pretty sure I have them all documented. You just need to search on my channel species documentation, and there'll be shorts. So now we're walking out here to go to some wheat, which is super, like there's just this one, I found it last year after it had already completely like it had already dropped its seeds when I found it last year. I didn't even notice it. But I've been keeping my eye on it this year. See the difference here? That's animals have been there for 20 years, right? See, it's a huge difference. I wish I could borrow their animals to mow my stuff because I was out here weed eating this all. I got to about there and I just got burned out on weed eating, to be honest. I weed eated. Yeah, it's like 5 or 6 acres. That's why I want to build a robot. All right. And look at that wheat right there. And it's a pretty rare kind of wheat, right? I mean, this is like not your normal wheat. I don't know if this is like an indigenous species or something that just got dropped out here, but I'm going to try to actually catch the seeds or whatever they're called this year. This stuff was so much bigger this year I didn't even recognize it. I thought this stuff was completely gone for some reason, and because I just recognized it by the flowers. And all of a sudden they started getting big. It's like, oh boy, those are bigger than they've ever been. There's a really good yarrow patch there. So yarrow comes in 2 different varieties out here, which are both white and just very lightly indistinguishable from each other, okay? But there is like 4 or 5 other different colors of yarrow that I actually bought and planted. I don't know if any are going to come up. I planted them in my flower garden, and hopefully they're going to plug. And I planted, oh boy, every kind of poppy I could find on eBay, and I see 0. So I wasted my money on poppy seeds. I don't know if I just fed the critters or what, but yeah, it's definitely not poppy land. And these things right here, this is like a one-off plant. This one right here, I don't know what this is, but it's the only one. It almost looks like a box glove. But when you see this like this, prairie dogs, that's a prairie dog. What it looks like on top of prairie dog, for some reason, I don't know why, but when you walk around and you get real big areas like that, those are prairie dogs. I only think I got one prairie dog out here because I did so much workout. Oh, there's some prairie dogs over there and like around here somewhere. But I did so much work out here, I think I pretty much like toasted most of their holes, so they moved or whatever. But the funny part about prairie dogs is there's like prairie dog highways out here. You could just see where they always are. See if I can see one here real quick. But I mean, they definitely follow the same paths and run down the same trails. It's pretty funny. Look at this grass here. Look at that. You can definitely see the different kinds of grass, right? Like this grass hasn't even gone to seed yet. Look how healthy and thick and how much there is like for an animal to eat, right? There's a lot to eat there, right? Well, a lot of the times what they're selling you is like this kind of, and they call this like drought grass, right? But what is there to eat? There's like nothing. If you plant your whole field with this kind of grass, you know, you're going to end up with nothing if you're going to put animals on it, right? I absolutely love these little puffs of grass. These things are so cute. They're just little puffs of grass. But if they don't get burned, this is what happens to them. They just start to get something, and you got to burn them. When you burn them, boy, do they come back the next year looking great. Just look at this. This is not what you see when walking around Central Oregon. Not at all, but you should. You should most definitely be seeing this everywhere. And even better. I mean, all this is all putting carbon in the atmosphere. If you have uncovered soil, and typically Mother Nature does not have uncovered soil in nature. That is sheerly our interventions that have created that. I think here's another prairie dog mound. You see holes, and I think it's maybe the grasses don't grow very good in the prairie dog holes because the prairie dogs are eating, I don't know. Oh, there's a prairie dog highway. Can you see it right there? They're always amusing to me. Do you know they make freaking pets out of prairie dogs? They make pets out of everything, but prairie dog pets, wow, those things are super affectionate. But I'm like, I swear the ones out here only are out for like 3 or 4 months. Like, I don't even see them in like August or September. They're already underground permanently, or maybe they come out in the morning or something, I don't know. But they're interesting little things. And they're kind of annoying because they're always digging stuff up. See, I do a lot of burning, right? All that needs to be burned. That needs to be burned. This needs to be burned. You see this here? That's like the rot kind of grass that doesn't get burned and it turns into that. But once it gets burned, boy, it comes back like you wouldn't believe. It's actually going to be a lot more flowers here in a few days with all the yarrows going to be sprouting. So this over here was some of the worst part of my property, and it had like these crazy, it was like just like this over on this other property, right? These ginormous sage that just have nothing growing around them. So what I did was I just took some topsoil that I had because I scraped it up from various areas around here and just put piles all around out here. Just little piles. And I mean, it's working perfectly. Look at that, it's all just green. You know, it used to look just like that. You know, these huge, just nothing areas. Like that whole area right there. This all out here was the same way. And all I did was dump little piles. A bunch of swales, in essence, is what it turns out to be. I've done a lot of work on invasive species by just pulling them all year, last year and the year before, and boy, has it made a difference, because I haven't seen any that I needed to pull this year. I mean, literally not one. So, and there's like 3 or 4 that I'm looking out for. But some of the best flowers out here get eaten before they even bloom. Look at this grass. That has a pretty colors to it. That one turns really purple when it gets bigger. But you can definitely see the difference in the grasses, like what kind of grass would actually provide any kind of food versus, you know, just growing grass. I mean, that stuff there, I'm pretty sure this is like what they grow in the fields and harvest, right? Look how big, and it is nowhere near putting off seeds, right? And so look at this stuff right next to it. This little tiny little poof of grass has all these early seeds, right? But what is there to eat right there? Not much. That's why it's important to have a mixture, in my opinion, right? Because they're all doing a little bit different stuff, and you know, from year to year, you'll have some years that you're getting, you know, really horrible, and you'll be happy you have at least some little grass growing. And other years, like now, that this stuff will just be like, boom, right? And just look at this. This is what's supposed to be like out here. So here's the great example of the 2 different kinds of yarrow. That's one kind, this is one kind, right? And you can see the subtle differences in the size of these, the height of this, and a color, little bit of a color difference. You see the difference? And the flowers bloom a little differently as well. So there's some yarrow. The key to yarrow is you got to knock it. You got to knock it down every year. I have some that I didn't knock down because I really didn't know what was going on, and it just basically just died. Oh, there's a big old weed I want to get rid of. This stuff here, it's definitely got to go. What I do is I like round up chunks like this, right? And I'll just pile it on that. And then once it gets going, the wood will burn longer and burn it out totally. And I would do this differently if I did this again. I'd focus more on getting the junipers and the sage, or just the sage, out, not crushing it down in, which is what I did. Getting it ripped up out. See these huge patches? I have similar patches, but they're covered in this stuff here now, right? So this stuff is doing its job. Look at this patch. But you can see, nope, that's not what you can see. You can see sometimes there are all these weird like half moon shapes. It's because the grass in the middle dies when you don't mow it, basically. See? It's dead in the middle. Look how bad that one looks. That does not look healthy at all. So I burn that. Hopefully I'll stumble on it when I'm burning one day. Maybe not this year, but next. And next year, that'll be a whole different story. Look at this. Look at that. I mean, if you were an animal that ate grass, you'd just be like, nummy. So, yeah, The Central Oregon law enforcement is trying to suppress this information, believe it or not. Yeah, it's kind of disturbing. Just like the religious folks that decided to be duped by the scientists that told them Jesus was the only person that could affect the weather, right? And now look where we are today. We're in deep doo-doo because of the religious folks. And now we've got the same kind of mentality suppressing this knowledge. They're calling the freaking people that I call to bring attention to this and tell them to ignore me. Yeah. Check that out. Oh, there's a bee. Little baby bee. But yeah, those are some of the flowers. Yeah. Yeah, then like here is an area that's really bad. A lot of these areas that are really bad were ants just really mess stuff up big time. But you can see the white is that, the stuff here is this stuff from last year. So, and what it does, it traps stuff. So the wind blows stuff in there, traps it, and makes it so this will grow, actually grow. So it takes a while to cure the problems that have been created over 100 years. You can't just flip a switch and get this stuff to be fixed. This is a big prairie dog city right here. All right. As you can see, I am the grass whisperer. Like, subscribe, peace.